Take two. This is the second time I'm recording this because I pressed the wrong button on my camera. Yeah, let's hope that I get it right this time. G'day to all you lovely people and welcome back to my channel. I'm Kathy and today I'm going to tell you what I got up to in June. Now the weather has been fluctuating a lot today, so I might have to move and record the rest of this somewhere else. I guess we will see. Let's hope the sun stays here for a little while longer. This is going to be my first monthly wrap up in a while where I talk about anything significant that might have happened, a little bit about the weather, what I've been watching, and of course what I have been reading. And timestamps will be in my description box below. And as I said, this is the second time I'm recording this. I've done this now 3 times, accidentally pressed the wrong button on my camera where I got no audio. So frustrating. I do the whole video thinking it's fine. When I go to edit, there's no audio. So the whole video is unusable. The trials and tribulations of being a YouTuber. Anyway, so June is the first month of winter in Australia. And unlike I think in the Northern Hemisphere, winter starts here on the 1st of June. And boy, it has been so cold. Wow. Yeah, it has been unseasonably cold. Really, really cold. Much colder than we're used to. Many more days, for example, below 10 degrees Celsius or near 0 overnight. Usually that doesn't happen until later in the season, and it certainly doesn't happen as often as it has already just in June. As for anything significant, well, I caught the flu. After getting the bloody flu shot, would you believe it? Yeah, I was sick for about 2.5 weeks. I thought, why the hell did I get the flu shot if I'm going to get this sick? Who knows how it came about? It doesn't matter. I'm almost over it, though you can probably hear that my voice isn't quite back to normal yet. Cleo, my demon child, is still my demon child. We are going up and down. Things have been pretty good overall, but she is still very bratty at times, though. Now she's behaving beautifully. Yeah, normally she's very disruptive when I'm recording, but she's now going to sleep, so yay. My cat is driving me crazy as well, Maya. She is just being really demanding lately, probably because her routine has kind of changed. So they have been a bit of a trial, but nothing out of the ordinary. Generally in winter, I tend to hibernate. I don't like going out because it's cold. I just want to be inside where it's nice and toasty warm. So, of course, as a result, I've been reading more and watching a few things. And maybe because I was sick, I have watched a little bit more than I usually do. I'm still watching The Big Bang Theory. I am in the middle of season 11 and I have not seen the last few seasons, so I'm really enjoying it right now. I also decided, oh no, she's not asleep now, she's here. Okay. I've also started watching Bridgerton. Yeah, I actually read the books around 10 years ago. Found them quite ordinary, very forgettable. So I wasn't really interested in watching the show. But it seems everyone around me was watching it and I thought I need to see what all the fuss is about. I'm in the middle of season 2. I watched a lot of it when I was sick and it is very, very watchable. And I do love period dramas with all the sumptuous costumes and details like the footmen and the carriages. I love all of that. But my conclusion was that it seemed more like a sex fest than a romance. I don't have any problem with sex in a show, but it seemed to take the emphasis away from the romance itself. Certainly not something that I think I will watch again, but I will most likely finish it at some point. I also started Three Pints since I finished the books by Louise Penny. This stars Alfred Molina as Inspector Gamache, and I thought he was perfect as Gamache. But again, the emphasis of the show seems to be not so much on the murder mysteries as much as it is on how the natives have been treated throughout history in Canada. And whilst this is a very important subject, I expected it to be more like the books. Penny very lightly touches on what has happened to, say, native girls in Canada who seem to be disappearing. And I think I would have liked to have seen a bit more of the village and the people in the village, as they play such a major part in the show. So I'm enjoying it, and I'm sad that it's been cancelled, but it certainly isn't a favourite, no. And because I was sick, I have not been knitting. I've decided to order some more thicker yarn because it's so cold here, and I need thicker jumpers like this one. And I know this one looks like a chocolate box. It wasn't meant to, but there you go. Now I'm going to do something a little different with my wrap-ups, my monthly ones. And this was inspired by my friend Jacqueline. I'll tell you what is my favourite, least favourite, most disappointing, and most surprising read of each month. In June, I read 13 books and I DNF'd one. The one I DNF'd was Born to Exile by Phyllis Eisenstein. It was one I had had on my shelves for at least 30 years. And I thought it was a novel. It wasn't. It was short stories or novellas about a minstrel who had the ability to teleport. I thought, great concept. The execution left a lot to be desired. I found it very pedestrian. It came across more like a historical romance that happened to have a character who could teleport. There was so little magic in it that I couldn't even bear to finish the first short story. And I've decided to unhaul this book as well. Yeah. But I did have a really good month overall. I read Dead House Gates, the second book in Malazan, the Book of the Fallen series by Stephen Erickson. And I have just brought out a review on that, so I'm not going to say anything except that, yeah, I really loved it. I also read the last 4 Lemony Snicket books, a series of unfortunate events about the Baudelaire children. And whilst I really did enjoy them, I'm a little ambivalent about the end. A little dissatisfied, I think, where the children ended up. The books don't actually answer all our questions regarding what has happened to the children or their parents. And I think that was the point, that sometimes you're just not going to get answers. It also dealt with how sometimes you simply cannot avoid conflicts, no matter how much you might wish to. Sometimes you have to take sides. I liked some of the messages. I was just not happy with the final book in particular. Yeah. Though I'm very glad I read them because they were charming and very enjoyable. I also read The Dark Horse by Craig Johnson, I think it is 5th book in the Walt Longmire series. I read it because my friend Jacqueline actually ended up meeting Craig Johnson, so I was inspired and I really enjoyed it. This is a series about a sheriff in a small town in Wyoming, and he is sent a prisoner, a young woman, accused of killing her husband. He doesn't believe she committed the murder, so he goes undercover, and that's really all I want to say about the plot. I really like Craig Johnson's description of the landscape and living in small towns. It comes across as authentic to me. And this mystery was good. It wasn't too heavy on police procedure, which I don't enjoy. It was more about the mystery. We also got to learn a bit more about Walt's background. We also saw Henry. though there was a little bit of male posturing in this as well, which perhaps is natural, but it's not something that I really love. It was also unpredictable. It wasn't that easy to guess the ending. Then I read Death at Wentwater Court by Carola Dunn, the first Daisy Dalrymple book. I really disliked this book. It is meant to be a cozy mystery set in the 20s. This felt so forced. The writing felt so forced. We were told how to feel about the characters, which I don't like at all. She was trying to make Daisy a very charming character, and whilst I did like her, some things that happen in this book I absolutely detested. Daisy is a noblewoman from the upper classes in England who decides to work as a reporter. She is employed by Town and Country because of her social connections, which would allow her entrance into some old families and ancestral homes. She goes to this castle of this earl and his family, and a murder takes place. Then we have, I think it is a chief inspector or a detective inspector, a high-ranking investigator, come to investigate this murder. And he basically shares information with Daisy because he fancies her. Seriously? He's a police officer. No one would do that. She should have been a suspect as well. But no, he decides to use her as a stenographer and to share details which he doesn't share with others. That I found very hard to believe. But the ending, oh wow, yeah. Daisy keeps telling us how respectful she is of the police, how she needs to tell them the truth. And then we find out that this murder was actually an accident, and she helps the person who caused this accident to flee the country and avoid justice. I was so angry that she thought this was okay, that it was all right for her to help someone escape justice after all her talk about respecting the police. Her reasons for doing this was to help this family avoid scandal. Somebody was killed. Big deal if there is a scandal. Someone should be held accountable to actually help that person to flee the country. It was just disgusting. And there were no consequences as a result. Yeah, I was so angry at this, at the preferential treatment given to the nobility by virtue of their birth, regardless of if they're killers or not, that I decided at the end, I do not think I want to read any more of this series. And I actually did buy one. I found it secondhand. Because in addition to this ending, she kept repeating things like, "What ho?" or "flappers," to indicate the times. And it was just so cringeworthy. You can evoke a period in history without having to repeat certain catchphrases over and over again. Yeah, it was very clumsily done. And whilst part of me wants to read the second since I've already got one, part of me just feels I might be wasting my time. Who knows? Maybe I'll try the first chapter, and if I don't like that in the second book, then I'll get rid of the one I've got. Yeah. I also read The Painted Man by Peter V. Brett, the first book in the Demon Cycle series. This was a Patreon book club read. This is fantasy, and it is really, I think, a coming-of-age story about a young boy who runs away from home because he is fed up with the fear people are living with in this world. as there are demons called callings who appear at night and are slowly killing the population. People use wards to protect themselves against these callings, but if there is even a small gap in these wards, these callings can get through and will basically devour people. I do like this concept of the wards being used, which one of my patrons reminded me is very similar to the wards used in the Death Gate Cycle by Margaret West and Tracy Hickman, which I do love. And it was utilised really well. And I also really liked the character of Arlen, who we see growing up in a city, learning wards to become a messenger, who travels between villages and towns bearing news, mail, helping with trade, who also spend nights under the stars where it is dangerous without any protection against the callings except for their wards. They're heroic figures. There were several other characters we were introduced to, such as Leisha, and I can never remember his name. Is it Jax? I'm not sure. The Jongleur. We spent a bit of time with Leisha, a young girl in a small village, Cutter's Hollow. We did not spend as much time on the Jongleur, and he kind of felt superfluous to me because the author just didn't spend enough time with them throughout the rest of the book. He spent a lot more time with Arlen. But Leisha, for example, got several chapters, and then later we might get just one. And something that happened with her really, I really hated. Very much so. Whilst I did enjoy this book and I thought it was a good fantasy, it did not stand out for me. I also did read The Desert Spear, the second book in the series, as part of my supersized, super small challenge. In fact, I've decided I'm going to read a supersize and super small each month until this challenge finishes, which is in September. I was intending to read the next Malazan book, but with the flu and feeling so sick, I thought, no, I need a clearer head when I read it. So instead, I read The Desert Spear. And this was well over 700. We spend a lot of time with a character who we met in the first book, Jadir, and his culture. I thought we spent perhaps a little bit too much time with him. Perhaps. We also got to spend time with another character, Rena, as well as Leisha, but not as much time with the Painted Man. This book I didn't enjoy as much as the first. I just didn't feel it advanced this story all that much. I think it was meant to more advance the characters' story arcs. That's how I felt at the end of it. But I felt like this could have been cut in half and that would have been sufficient. I do have quite a few criticisms, and I'm considering doing a review on the series as I've now read 2 books and I'm intending to read the rest. I also read 2 Stephanie Plum books by Janet Evanovich, books 5 and 6. It's been a while since I've read them and I've wanted to progress further in the series, and I'm glad I picked them up. They were a lot of fun. These are one of the few books that I laugh out loud in because Grandma Bazua is just classic, iconic. They're very well written. They're fluff though. I do not consider these anything deep and meaningful, and they're not meant to be. They're meant to be enjoyable, and they are. I also read, what was it? The Turn of the Screw by Henry James. This was my super small book for June. This is a classic, so it also served as my classic, and it is about a governess who is sent to this remote house to look after 2 almost perfect children. And we are reading her narrative, her diary I think it is, or retelling of what happened to her. I haven't read Henry James before, though I've seen a few films based on his books like Portrait of a Lady. I found his writing in this one extremely convoluted. I would have to go back and reread sentences to make sense of them. And I think that might have been deliberate on the author's part to confuse us, because he does confuse us. And I should mention, this is a ghost story, or so we're led to believe. And near the beginning, I thought, I think this governess is crazy. That's what I thought, just by the way she was reacting and describing these events. I wasn't sure, was she a reliable or unreliable narrator? I kept fluctuating as I was reading the book, thinking, no, she's not insane. This is accurate. And then thinking, well, no, maybe it isn't, because she does share what she thinks is extraneous support of her claim that there are ghosts. But this is only her word for it. That doesn't necessarily make it true. She's telling us that this other person can also see ghosts. How easy it is to be duped into thinking, oh, she's telling the truth. In the end, I decided that I don't think she is. I think she's crazy. And the ending was shocking. Yeah, I did not expect it. I really liked this book. It took a while to get through because the writing was so dense and convoluted and far too complex, really. But it was worth it, I thought. And it's made me want to at least try another Henry James, though I'm not sure which yet. And last I read Flying Too High, the second Phryne Fisher mystery by Kerry Greenwood. These are, I'm not sure if I'd call them cozy mysteries, that take place in the 20s in Melbourne. Miss Phryne Fisher is considered this intrepid, courageous rule breaker, free spirit who likes to undertake investigations. In this one, there were 2 concurrent mysteries, and I think it was the same in the first book. And whilst I do enjoy the mysteries, I don't always feel we are given enough clues to be able to come to the same conclusion as Miss Fisher. And some of her actions I just found really hard to accept as possible. For example, Phryne Fisher decides to walk the wings of a plane up in the air, and I thought, hang on, I just don't buy this. She doesn't even know this pilot. She just met him. She doesn't know how good or bad he is. Would you take such a risk up in the air? I don't believe so. If that was meant to show us how courageous she is, it just showed me how foolish she is. Yeah. And then there was another incident where she hangs off the back of this vehicle for miles. Yeah, I think she would have been dead, but okay, let's suspend disbelief for a while. I just thought this was a ridiculous plot, and I didn't like that at all. And it really took away my enjoyment of the book. I don't have any trouble believing this character can be courageous, brave, intrepid, reckless, but at least make the things she does believable. That's how I see it. It doesn't mean I didn't enjoy the book. They were just 2 things that really bugged me and that I didn't like. I am going to read more in this series. I also own quite a few. In fact, I think I might end up buying the whole series just for completeness. But at this point, whilst I'm enjoying them, I'm not loving them yet. No. Perhaps I'll need a few more books. We'll see. Yeah. All right. My most disappointing book. The last book in the Lemony Snicket series, The End. And when I say that, it doesn't mean it was terrible. It just means that I was hoping for something different to conclude the series. And I was a little disappointed. Not a lot, but a little. As for the most surprising book I read in June, that goes to Dead House Gates. I was not expecting the reaction I had to it. That one blew me away. Yeah. So what was my least favourite? Death at Wentwater Court by Carol Dunn. Hated this book. I really did. So yeah, that was definitely my least favourite. And my favourite book, or the best book I read in June, was again Deadhouse Gates. Yeah. Well, that is all I have for you guys today. Now, of course, I'd love to hear what you got up to in June. And if you have read any of the books that I've read, I'd love to hear your opinions on them. And you can let me know down in the comments, or you can contact me on Instagram. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, then you can do the usual. You can like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I also have a Patreon account if you wish to support me in that way. I hope you all have a beautiful day, and I'll see you next time. Bye. I wanted to thank all my patrons, but a big shout out to my book dragons, Gabriella, Johanna, Joe, Laurie, Kiki, Michael.